Hey everybody, welcome back. Today, I want to get back to some of the common questions I get. I think I last talked about the most common questions I get a year or so ago now, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it's important to think about because most podcasters getting into podcasting are asking the same questions. And so we want to answer those. Hands down, the number one question I get all the time is, how do I monetize my podcast? How do I make money from my podcast? And I want to stop for a moment because, I used to go into a sort of canned answer where I would say, well, you can make money from your podcast, but you're better off sponsoring yourself. Don't think about getting ads. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I want to start and say, if you're doing a podcast because you just want to do a podcast and you're having fun podcasting, you don't have to make money from it, okay? Being a podcaster doesn't automatically mean you have to make money from it. That could actually make it more stressful. That could actually make it something that you don't enjoy doing. And if you're having fun, if you want to get a microphone and talk into it and talk about something, you don't have to monetize, okay? You can just do it however you want. But if you're in a place where either it's for your business or you're creating content and you want to make money from that content, here's how, you can monetize a podcast in a way that isn't so stressful. You've heard me say this before. I'll start out and say, yeah, you got to sponsor yourself, because unless you have 5,000, 7,000, 2,000 downloads per episode after 30 days, you're not going to get those big advertisers, okay? If you have a few more downloads than the average, like the average download number is about 160 downloads per episode after 30 days right now. If you are 500 downloads, 1,000 downloads after 30 days, you might be able to go to an individual advertiser, a business that you work with, a product that you use, a niche product that is only for your industry or your type of audience, and do a one-on-one deal where you could get some ads, buys, and things like that. But for most podcasters, that's not the option. So you've heard me talk about it before. In monetizing, you want to think about things like, what products do I have? What services do I offer? What events could I create? What things could I do that I could use my podcast to promote? What downloads could I sell? What courses do I have? What ebooks could I create that I could sell and promote using my podcast? That is going to be the most effective way for most people to monetize their podcast. Now, there's always some random things out there. Like, you could charge people to be guests on your show, but you need to have a big audience. You need to be desirable. There's lots of random things out there that you could do. But most podcasters, when they decide I want to monetize, need to focus on, what do I do? What do I sell? What can I get people to buy that I can promote on my podcast? That's the simple answer. So that's the number one question I get, hands down. It means a lot of podcasters are thinking about monetization. The second most common question I get is, well, how do I build my audience? Because podcasters want to build an audience that, they want people to listen to them. They don't want to be speaking into the void. And really, the best way to build your audience is to, first of all, grow it organically. Think inside. Think, okay, how do I make my show better? How do I make a show that I would want to listen to? And then let me find the people that are like me, that want to listen to this, whatever I'm talking about, or that need my services of my business. And the way to do that, first and foremost, is to talk to your current audience, whatever audience you have, social media, email, your current podcast listeners, and always remind them that they are your best source of new audience. And whatever they can do to promote, tell other people, rate, review, all those things, it still works. It still works to get the word out about your podcast and grow organically, okay? After you do that, you want to think about borrowing audiences. And the way to borrow audiences is to go on other podcasts, go on other shows, go on other channels. And that means being an expert in something, having topics that you could talk about, questions that you could suggest that other podcast hosts ask you, and providing that to them and going on those shows and driving people back to your podcast, telling them about, hey, go listen to episode 22 where I talked about this topic that I just answered and I went more in depth, or I brought so and so onto my show. Get people back that way. And then borrow audiences by promoting, going on other channels, whether that's social media. I've heard some, I always don't mention it enough, but things like Pinterest, where you could do Pinterest posts daily to your old podcast episodes and use that Pinterest search engine and that Pinterest community to get people interested in the topics that you are talking about. And, I've talked about it before. You could do launch teams. You could do anything to get your audience or other audiences interested in coming to your show. And then, providing content in other channels, like I just mentioned, Pinterest, but going live on YouTube, going live on LinkedIn, going live on Facebook or Instagram, and talking about some things and training people in some things, and then reminding them that, hey, if you want to learn more, go back to my podcast. So anything you can do to bring people back to your show will help you grow your audience. And you can always do ad buys. You can do ad swaps where you agree on your show to talk about another podcaster and they agree on their show to talk about you. Those work as well. You can do all those things. You can try to be on bigger shows, especially. You can pitch 10 podcasters that have bigger audiences every month and try to get a spot on their show to be interviewed. Those all work. You should do all of those things at all the time to help build and grow your audience. So that's number 2. Number 1 was, how do I monetize my show? Number 2 is, how do I build an audience? Number 3, probably the most common question I get is, what equipment do I need? And, there's still lots of blog posts out there that tell you to get the best stuff and this new thing and this new thing. And I can tell you honestly that in the last 4 or 5 years of doing this, where I've been helping people launch shows, grow shows, I'm really still recommending the same equipment. I never tell people to go buy the most expensive digital audio interface and go buy an SM7B and use that, and then buy more microphones, buy a mixer and all those types of things that we used to get. I've never recommended that. There are new tools, like the Rode has a bunch of tools where you have built-in mixer / audio interface, sound effects, all those types of things that you can use. There are handheld recorders where you can plug a bunch of different microphones into it. And in certain situations, that's the best thing to do. But I always come back and I'm still recommending the Audio-Technica ATR 2100X now as the microphone. There's other microphones that are similar to that, but that's still the one I go to because it's a combination USB XLR microphone. It's dynamic microphone, so it sounds good in a lot of places. It sounds good on a lot of different voice types, and you can plug it directly into your computer, which you already have. And I'm sitting here, I'm doing a solo episode, so I don't even have headphones on. So you can have headphones, you can use your earbuds. I'm trying to think that, I've got the mic stand for the microphone, but the ATR 2100 comes with a mic stand that you can use. And really at that point, that's all the equipment that you need because you already have a computer. There are things you can do. Like I said, there are other things you can use, but then if you're recording interviews, you're probably most likely going to use Zoom, which is easy because everyone knows how to use it now after the COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone is used to communicating that way. You can use Zoom. You can use a little more advanced tools like Riverside.fm or something like that are similar and a little bit higher quality, but really you don't need any equipment there. That's just software. You can subscribe to Descript to have an editor, and or you can use free tools like Audacity or GarageBand or things like that to edit your podcast. You really don't need a lot. It's really just the committing to the tools you're going to use and then settling in for the learning curve is really what gets a lot of people. So with, right now I'm recording using an ATR 2100X recording into QuickTime. And it's a simple recording that I'm going to then throw into Descript to edit. And then I will publish it using Libsyn, and really didn't have any other equipment involved in that process. So, number one, how do you monetize? That's the most common question I get right now. Second most common question I get is, how do you build or grow an audience? And number three is, what equipment should I have? So hopefully I've updated you on my answers. Some of those have changed, but some of are still the same. Like, they really haven't changed. You know, things don't change as quickly in certain areas of podcasting as you think they would, especially not in technology and things like that. You know, we've had some revolutionary changes with editors and DAWs like Descript, but we're still using the same microphone. We're still saying, don't get the Blue Yeti, buy the ATR 2100X and things like that. So hopefully this was helpful. I will get out of your ears right now, and I will be back next week with some more content. I'll talk to you soon.